There was this headline from a couple of years ago about Gen Z workers that read something like, showing up 10 minutes late to work is as good as being on time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that one. People went absolutely crazy over it.
They really did. I mean, the reaction was immediate. It was like people were projecting all their own workplace frustrations and, their generational anxieties all onto this one single headline.
Yeah, everybody suddenly had a very strong opinion on what 10 minutes means.
Exactly. But it brings up this huge question, right? Why does waiting 10 minutes for a coworker feel like this deeply personal insult to some people, while to others, it barely even
Right.
registers?
It's completely baffling until you realize that friction, it isn't actually about clocks or generations at all.
No, it's not.
It is fundamentally a breakdown of shared reality.
Which is, I mean, that's a pretty heavy concept to lay on someone who's just running to grab a coffee before a morning meeting.
Oh, for sure. But if you only look at lateness as like a scheduling error or some quirk of a specific generation, you are completely missing the underlying human dynamic that actually holds all our social structures together.
Yeah, and to really understand that dynamic, we're doing a deep dive today, and we are leaning heavily on the work of a really fascinating author who looks at this from a very unique angle.
Yes, and the perspective he brings is so needed right now.
It really is. So, just to give you some background, Tony Zampella is founder of Avana Learning Group, experts in contemplative learning to cultivate inner wisdom. As a wisdom coach, guide, and leadership and learning consultant, Tony's work involves ontological inquiry, integral meta theory, and Buddhist psychology to sustain contemplative practice.
And, it's exactly that background that makes his analysis so compelling.
Yeah.
Like, he isn't just giving us a standard time management seminar here.
Right, no life hacks or spreadsheet templates.
Exactly. He's actually using tools like Buddhist psychology, which obviously focuses heavily on our presence and awareness in any given moment to diagnose why we feel so disconnected from each other when the clock ticks past the hour.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Impala points out that this whole modern debate over lateness has actually been brewing for
Oh,
years.
yeah, way before the pandemic even.
Right, long before that specific Gen Z headline. If you dig into forums and Reddit message boards going back to 2019, people were already arguing so intensely about what timeliness means.
And those arguments always seem to settle into the same distinct camps, right?
They do, four very distinct and honestly completely contradictory camps. Zampella maps these out impartially just to show how fractured our understanding of time has become.
So on one side, you got people arguing that strict adherence to timeliness is essentially just a corporate control mechanism.
Like it's just about power.
Exactly. In this view, demanding someone clock in at 8 a.m. sharp, it isn't about productivity at all. It's just a structural enforcement of authority. It's capitalism flexing its muscles.
Right. And then jumping to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have a group that views lateness as a fundamental, almost unforgivable sign of disrespect.
Oh, the time is money crowd.
Yes, but even deeper than money. Their argument centers on time as the ultimate finite resource. Like, their logic is, I can earn back money, I can replace physical items, but time is the one resource in the universe I cannot recover.
So if you make me wait, you're effectively stealing a piece of my life.
Exactly, it's a theft. But then you have a third perspective, which I think is super interesting because it operates a bit beneath the surface.
Yeah, this is the one where people use lateness as a way to withhold their time in environments where they feel utterly powerless.
Oh, wow. Like a protest.
Kind of. When every other aspect of your day, your tasks, your location, your deliverables, when all of that is dictated by external forces, showing up on your own personal schedule becomes this micro-rebellion.
Huh. A quiet reclamation of autonomy.
Exactly. Sometimes they don't even consciously realize they're doing it.
That's wild. And then the fourth camp looks at that exact normalization of lateness, those micro rebellions, and they interpret it as a broader cultural decline.
Right. The nobody wants to take responsibility anymore camp.
Exactly. They see it as a growing intolerance for basic accountability. Like,
Yeah.
if we can't even agree to show up in the same room at the same time, the basic social contract is just unraveling.
But what Zampel observes using that integral meta theory approach we mentioned is that all four of these are still just surface interpretations.
Just symptoms of the disease.
Right. Whether you view it as a power struggle, or a theft, or rebellion, or a societal decline, you aren't looking at the actual environment that created the friction in the first place.
Because we have fundamentally shifted the way we exist in time, right?
Yes. We no longer live in organic analog time.
Yeah.
We exist almost entirely in digital time.
Okay, let me see if I can translate that because this distinction feels really crucial. So organic analog time is rhythmic. Think of like the seasons. You plant a seed and you literally just have to wait for the harvest.
You can't speed run a tomato plant.
Right. You can't hack it to grow faster. Your physical body, your environment, your community, they all move together in a shared predictable flow. But digital time is, well, it's like having 50 browser tabs open at once.
And they're all auto-playing different videos at max volume.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's this always-on culture of immediate speed and complete fragmentation. It prioritizes the exact immediate present over any real sense of a long-term past or future.
And that constant acceleration fundamentally distorts our expectations of reality. When everything is instantaneous, waiting becomes basically intolerable. Our sense of deeper, sustained meaning just starts to erode.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second because, I mean, conceptually, time is just time.
Listen, though.
Well, a minute is a minute. Doesn't matter if it's vibrating silently on my sleek smartwatch or ticking loudly on a dusty grandfather clock in some hallway. A minute passes. So how does existing in digital time actually alter human behavior enough to make us, fundamentally change our relationship to being late?
So what's fascinating here is Zampella's concept that digital time actually disconnects us from our own temporality by turning time into an isolated commodity.
An isolated commodity. Okay, explain that.
Think about it like this. In the analog world, time was something you lived within. But in the digital world, time is something you manage. You start treating it as a resource to be individually spent or saved or optimized on some spreadsheet.
Oh, like when I try to perfectly Tetris my calendar to get 5 extra minutes of work done.
Exactly. You try to squeeze maximum efficiency out of every second for yourself. But approaching time as this solitary math problem completely ignores the reality that time is fundamentally social.
Social before it is mechanical. Oh, I think I see where this is going. We aren't just isolated avatars moving between calendar appointments in a vacuum.
No, we exist in this massive, invisible web of human coordination. Every meeting, every project deadline, every casual, hey, I'll call you later, it all exists in a relational field.
Yeah.
You are coordinating action with other human beings.
So when I treat time purely as my own personal resource to optimize, when I think, oh, I can squeeze in just one more email before I leave for this meeting without considering the person who's actually going to be waiting for me.
You disconnect from the relational realities that sustain trust. You're optimizing your own digital cell on the spreadsheet, but you are breaking the social web.
Wow. Okay, so because time is social, an interruption of time is an interruption of that social coordination.
Exactly.
But obviously, not all delays carry the same weight. Like if my car breaks down, that is very different from me just deciding to ignore my alarm clock.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where Zampella breaks lateness down into 3 distinct tiers, which I love because it really helps remove that blanket moral judgment from being late and lets us look at the actual mechanics of participation.
Right, because if a manager just treats all lateness as the exact same behavioral failure, they are never going to solve the underlying issue. So let's look at how this actually manifests.
Let's do it.
The first tier is situational lateness. This is the one we all understand because, well, life simply happens to all of us.
Right. You get a flat tire.
Exactly. There's a multi-car pileup on the highway, or a pipe bursts in your kitchen, or your kid spikes a fever literally as you're walking out the door. The author makes a really important point here.
Yeah.
You can be late with complete integrity.
Which is such a great phrase, late with integrity. It might sound like a paradox, especially to that camp of people who view time as a strict metric of respect.
Yeah, the time theft camp.
Right. But integrity isn't about some magical perfection where traffic patterns always bend to your will. Integrity reveals itself in how you respond to the inevitable delay.
So, if you are situationally late, but you have a strong sense of responsibility, you rely on communication, you pull over safely, you send a text or make a call, and you say, look, I'm stuck behind an accident. I will be 20 minutes late. Please start the briefing without me.
Yes, you are actively working to sustain your participation in that relational field.
Your physical body is delayed, but you are keeping the connection alive. You are still in the web.
Now, contrast that with the second tier, structural lateness.
Ooh, okay. Structural.
This one doesn't stem from an unpredictable emergency. It stems from a recurring pattern of disorganization or distraction or just a chronic lack of boundaries.
I feel like we all know someone in this tier.
Definitely. But Tony Zampella is careful to point out that this isn't rooted in malice. The person isn't trying to sabotage the team. It is a lack of awareness, and a lack of necessary systems.
I can picture this perfectly. It's the person who genuinely, deeply wants to be on time, but they constantly underestimate the actual physics of reality.
Yes, the magical fingers.
Exactly. They don't factor in the time it takes to, find their keys, walk to the car, deal with normal traffic, and actually find a parking spot. Or it's the professional who simply cannot say no. So they agree to handle 4 projects that require 50 hours a week.
While only having 40 hours physically available in the week.
Right. And the solution for structural lateness isn't just try harder or care more. It requires actual, tangible structures.
Yeah, you need calendar alerts. You need to build 15-minute buffers between your Zoom calls. You need to realistically scope your own capacity. You have to develop the discipline to align your daily actions with the commitments you've made.
Which makes total sense. But if structural lateness is just a failure of systems and boundaries, there is a third tier that feels significantly deeper and honestly a bit more difficult to manage.
Yeah, the third tier is intense.
This is ontological lateness. And just to clarify, ontological refers to the nature of being or existence. In this tier, time is dismissed as insignificant because the person unconsciously views their participation in the group as entirely optional.
They fail to realize that other people are actually relying on them, and that their absence actively alters the coordination of reality for everyone else.
They just don't see the web we talked about earlier.
No, they operate under this illusion that they are an entirely isolated individual, and therefore if they are late, it only really affects them.
So let me ask you this, because that sounds dangerously close to just a straight-up character flaw. Is ontological lateness just a polite, philosophical way of saying someone is arrogant? Like they just think their time is more valuable than everyone else's?
It is so easy to jump to that conclusion. But again, Zampella's approach uses contemplative psychology to look deeper than that. It's rarely about overt arrogance or malicious intent. He defines it as a diminishing commitment to reliable participation.
A diminishing commitment, okay?
Think back to that micro-rebellion we discussed earlier. The employee who feels powerless and quietly reclaims their autonomy by showing up 10 minutes late every day. Over time, that micro-rebellion calcifies into a worldview.
Wow, so it becomes their reality.
Yes. They develop a weakened connection to shared reality. They simply do not feel the weight of their own ripple effect. Whether they acknowledge it or not, their colleagues are organizing their workdays around their word.
And when they don't show up, they are fracturing that shared reality.
But they are too ontologically disconnected to even feel the break.
Man. And if ontological lateness is a fracture in shared reality, the place we feel the pain of that fracture most acutely has got to be in our workplaces. Because an organization is essentially just a giant, highly sensitive machine designed entirely to coordinate action among multiple human beings.
Exactly. And to understand how organizations actually function, and more importantly, how they fall apart, Zampella brings in the philosopher Martin Heidegger.
Oh, Heidegger, let's get into it.
Heidegger had this complex but incredibly illuminating view of how humans experience time. He argued that we don't just passively float down a river of time, bumping into events as they drift past us.
Right, we aren't just passengers looking out the window.
No, we actively generate futures. And we do this through our commitments. According to Heidegger, humans are always navigating 3 temporal realities at once.
Okay, what are the 3?
We are interpreting our present circumstances, we are referencing our memory of the past, and we are making promises that literally pull a specific theoretical future into actual existence.
That is such a wild concept to wrap your head around, but it makes perfect sense mechanically. I mean, think about it. A strategy meeting next Tuesday at 10 a.m. does not exist out there in the wild. You can't go find it in nature.
You can't pluck it off a tree.
Right. It only comes into existence because multiple people made a linguistic commitment to generate that shared future. Which brings us to Zampella's core thesis about work, which is that organizations are not just hierarchies. They aren't just flowcharts or branding documents or lists of job descriptions. Organizations are, fundamentally, networks of commitments.
The entire functioning of organizational life relies completely on requests, promises, and agreements. Without those 3 communicative acts requesting action, promising delivery, and agreeing on terms, an organization is literally just a room full of strangers staring at laptops.
The commitments are the infrastructure.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of an organization not as a pyramid-shaped org chart, but as a giant suspension bridge. Every time someone says, hey, I will have this market analysis to you by Friday, or I will handle the client escalation at 2 p.m., that phrase is a steel cable. It is bearing literal weight.
And the bridge only holds up the weight of the project because all these cables of commitment are woven together.
Exactly. So if enough people operate with ontological lateness, if they casually break those promises because they don't think their individual participation really matters, the cables snap.
And when enough cables snap, the bridge collapses,
Mhm.
regardless of how beautifully it was designed in the first place. And this highlights a critical, often ignored reality in modern business. Competence and talent are simply not enough to sustain a healthy culture.
Wait, really? Not enough at all.
No. You can hire the most brilliant, highly skilled, creative genius in your entire industry. But as that person is unreliable, if their word carries no weight, the coordination of the team eventually fractures.
It doesn't matter how incredibly strong one single steel cable is if it refuses to connect to the rest of the bridge.
That is exactly the mechanism of failure. Let's look at how that cascade actually happens in real life. Say someone casually misses a 9 a.m. deadline for a minor data report. They view it as a personal delay, no big deal. But because the network of commitments is real, the analyst waiting for that report is now delayed.
Oh, I see. A domino effect.
Right. They then miss their 1 p.m. sync with the marketing team. The marketing team then has to push their 5 p.m. client deliverable. By the end of the day, accountability has eroded across 3 whole departments.
And resentment accumulates.
Exactly. The people who are reliable end up working late to carry the weight for the people who aren't. And the culture slowly, inevitably deteriorates into toxicity. Trust depends on reliability, not just individual talent.
Okay, so if the suspension bridge is collapsing, how do we rebuild it? How do we protect that trust?
Well, Zampella argues that we can't do it with more project management software.
Thank goodness, no more tracking apps.
Right. We have to go back to the roots of the language we use to coordinate action. We need to remember the true weight of our words. And to prove this, he looks at the ancient etymology of 3 common words to show exactly what we have lost in our fast-paced digital world.
Let's go through these because they are fascinating. The first word is punctuality. Now, in modern digital time, when we hear punctual, we immediately think of a digital clock ticking over to the exact minute. It feels sterile, you know?
Mechanical.
Very mechanical. But the root is vastly deeper. Punctuality comes from the Latin word punctualis, which translates to of a point. Originally, it had absolutely nothing to do with sweeping clock hands. It meant exactness and fidelity to a shared point in relational space and time.
A shared point.
Yes. If you and I agree to meet at a specific coffee shop at 3 p.m., that is a point in the universe where we have explicitly agreed to converge our human energy. Arriving punctually means you are honoring that shared point. You are honoring the convergence of 2 lives.
Wow. That completely shifts the concept from a mechanical obligation like clocking in to avoid a penalty to a relational honor.
It changes the whole vibe.
It really does. And that relational aspect ties directly into the mechanism of the second word Zampella explores, which is agreement. Today, an agreement is usually treated like a legal contract, right? It is an exercise in transactional compliance. I agree to the terms of service. I check the box. I sign the dotted line to protect my liability.
Yeah, it's totally defensive. It's all about what happens when things go wrong.
Exactly. But if you look at the old French roots of the word agreement, it is tied to favor, pleasure, harmony, and shared will.
Shared will. I love that.
It wasn't a legal cage. It was about attunement. It meant coming into alignment together. Think of an orchestra tuning their instruments to the same exact pitch before a symphony begins.
Oh, that's a great image.
Right. An agreement is an act of coordinated meaning. A highly functional team doesn't succeed because they're terrified of violating the employee handbook. They succeed because they have a shared will. They have tuned their instruments to the same purpose.
Which brings us to the third word, and this might be my favorite, promise. In our current culture, a promise has basically been degraded into a casual prediction. Someone says, oh, I promise I'll try to get to that email today, which really just means I predict there is a 40% chance I will reply.
Okay, it means nothing.
Right. But Zampella traces it back to the Latin root promittere, which literally translates to send forth.
To send forth. The mechanism there is fascinating.
It changes everything. A promise is not a guess about the future. It is extending a piece of yourself. You are projecting your intention, your integrity, and your responsibility forward into time. You are literally sending yourself ahead to meet the other person in that generated future we talked about with Heidegger.
You know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, You can see how Zampella identifies these three concepts. Punctuality as honoring a shared point, agreement as the harmony of a shared will, and promise as sending your integrity forth.
Mm.
He sees these as the invisible social glue that holds human civilization together.
It sounds incredibly grand, but practically speaking, it is the only way a complex society functions.
Exactly. Civilization relies entirely on our ability to trust that when someone sends themselves forth into the future, they will actually be there waiting when we arrive.
So, what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at Reddit arguments and headlines about Gen Z being 10 minutes late, and we have waded through Buddhist psychology, Heidegger's generated futures, and the Latin roots of civilization. But it all lands in a very practical and frankly alarming reality for modern organizations. Zampella warns that we are currently living through the erosion of the weight of language.
This is the critical synthesis of all his work right here. When commitments are casually made and casually broken when I'll handle it tomorrow, actually means I might do it next week if the mood strikes me. We aren't just dealing with a slight drop in corporate efficiency.
No, it's way worse than that.
The organization begins to drift into what Zampella terms a subtle, soft nihilism.
Soft nihilism, that phrase perfectly captures that feeling of corporate burnout.
It is a quiet, creeping detachment from meaning. If words don't mean anything, then the work doesn't mean anything. Meetings lose their purpose and become empty rituals. Deadlines become mere suggestions.
Just a performance.
Right. Accountability turns into this hollow, performative theater where everyone pretends to care about the outcomes, but no one actually believes the commitments. And the ultimate tragedy is how leadership usually tries to fix this soft nihilism. They buy intrusive tracking software, they implement stricter digital metrics, or they mandate more oversight layers.
But you cannot fix weakened relational integrity with a new app.
You really can't. A dashboard cannot replace the foundational human belief that our words actually matter.
Which brings us entirely back to you listening right now. We all have to navigate this chaotic, fragmented digital time. We all have 50 browser tabs open in our minds. But the next time you find yourself casually running late, or the next time you tell a colleague, oh, I'll send that over tomorrow, without really intending to, remember the mechanism of what is actually happening beneath the surface.
You aren't just managing your schedule.
Right. You aren't just shuffling tasks on a to-do list in a vacuum. You are actively building or actively breaking a shared reality of the people around you. Timeliness isn't about submitting to a corporate control mechanism. It is fundamentally deeply about trust.
It truly is. And to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over today, think back to that Latin root of the word promise. Promitter. To send forth.
If a promise is quite literally a piece of your own integrity that you send forth into the future, what does it eventually do to your own sense of identity and your own self-worth when you constantly send pieces of yourself forward only to never arrive to meet them?